lunches. We live in a world of smarter everything, smart devices, smart cars, smart home. Why not make a smarter CMS? And when we're looking at that more and more in the decoupled context, what does that mean? So today's presentation is fairly light. We wanted to walk you through really some of the use cases that we see highlight, really as kind of agency partners, implementers, what does smarter CMS mean to us? So we'll run through a number of examples, what that looks like. If there's any questions, feel free to kind of throw your hands up. We can field them as we go. Otherwise, we should have a few minutes at the end for some Q&A as well. I'll cover off quick introductions.
Everyone's awake? Okay. The question is, which of these three people will be our guest star at the end? We'll see. All right. Anyway.
I'll do a quick introduction into our company. So my name is Benjamin Wool. I'm Director of Client Services at MyPlanet. Along with me is Michael Yonder, Head of Partnerships. When we started on this journey over 10 years ago, we were really looking at kind of this quadrant. Most people around CMS, especially 10 years ago, and maybe 8, 9 years ago, looking at what the desktop experience was, what mobile was, traditionally powered by CMS, and then of course, where maybe mobile native or hybrid or other solutions came into place. And more in the last 24 months, about 30% of our business has kind of shifted into the quadrants above my head here, in the IoT, the wearables, and the conversational interspaces. Today I'm going to tell you actually buying and investing into your CMS is one of the smartest things you can do for your business. You're not just powering the content for one channel, you're looking at powering the content for a number of channels. I'll do one more show just in case those missed it. This is the Smarter CMS one. If you're looking for infrastructure, you're in the wrong room. So I'll say that one last time. But this is really the space that we begin to play in now. More and more of our projects are looking at what can I do with an Alexa skill, something on action on Google. What can I build out for my mobile channel? What can I build out for the in-store experiences, for my running a digital end cap if I'm a retailer? And all of these things can be fundamentally powered by the CMS you're evaluating, perhaps the one maybe you have in place today. So starting to look at what the content needs might be for your CMS, starting to look at what the governance models need to look like, and then kind of thinking beyond perhaps the paradigm that you're looking at CMS or the lens that you're looking at CMS today. So these are a number of the interfaces that we'll cover off. Quick rundown, again, as I mentioned, when to think of MyPlanet. Since we're talking about conversational things, I'll say, hey Alexa, when should you think of MyPlanet?
Thanks for asking me that question, Ben. You should think of MyPlanet for your projects when the types of projects involve 1. Emerging interfaces, built-in conversational interfaces like me. 2. Embedded AI, that is embedding AI capabilities in user interfaces. 3. Interface automation, progressive architecture in which the interfaces constantly adapt and optimize. 4. Platform thinking, that is orchestrating across tens or hundreds of software interfaces.
I often like to tell our CEO everything should be in the rule of 3. Unfortunately, he disagreed. There is a 4. So I'll run through these pretty quickly. Alexa kind of spoke to them quickly. First one's around emerging interfaces. That's the kind of proliferation of devices, some with screens, some without, some gesture-based, some voice-controlled. So certainly the interfaces that you interact with, that consumers interact with, that the end users of your applications interact with, are changing, and that's an area more and more rapidly for our business as a software provider. The second is around embedding AI. Everyone wants to say, what can I do with my data? My data is a gold mine. Most people have data lakes doing absolutely nothing for them. So where can I begin to look at leveraging solutions around actually getting intelligence from your systems and applications? It's another area that we focus on. The third one, kind of where we're hedging our bets, say in the next 3 to 5 years, is looking at more rampant interface automation. And this would be the experience that you're looking at, drastically changing based on some context, based on something I know about you, kind of like the personalization on steroids, if you will. If I could sense, my wife drives me nuts when she's on an e-commerce site and she gets frustrated and she shakes her mouse as if someone's going to pop it at the screen saying, what are you looking for? But what if we could actually detect her frustration, see that actually the positions and the coordinates of the mouse are all over the place, and then actually present a pop-up, can you find what you're looking for? So where we can begin to change the interface based on some information, again, whether that's explicit, whether that's behavior-based, whether that's, I know that you just came from Instagram or Pinterest, maybe I'll give you visual search instead of traditional text search. So that's the areas that we're beginning to place investment bets ourselves. And then the last one's kind of the umbrella, when you're kind of orchestrating and thinking across these devices. What does the experience need to be? How am I looking at what a CMS should do, again, kind of across these myriad of surfaces and devices? So that's kind of when to think of My Planet. I'll stop the sales pitch there. We'll jump into the meat of the presentation, which is really going to look at some really projects that we've done, but that are emphasizing how you can look at your CMS a little bit differently. And that will come in kind of two varieties. The one are conversational interfaces, and then I'll pass it off to my colleague Michael to look at kind of the AR, VR mixed reality space and how you might think about the CMS in those cases. Kind of, again, building on this smarter CMS concept. So jumping into the conversational interface space, I'll run one through here. This one I'll use my phone for. Hey, Google, tell me something good. That's my phone not working. Hey, Google. Doesn't like my Canadian network here. Hey, Google. I'll just open up Assistant. Anyway, what I'm attempting to show, and live demos always go horrible, isn't that the case?
Hey Google, tell me something good. So what it's done is it's heard the request for a good story. Well, you explain it, Ben. What did it just do? I don't want to take your slide.
Yeah, no, certainly. So I'll do the advertising of don't buy a Samsung Galaxy device. It doesn't seem to work when you want it to. Really what we've helped build there was a first-party action on Google. But the same principles can apply if you're looking at building your own third-party action for your own organizations or for your customers. This one here was really to help kind of combat fake news. Instead of people being bombarded with horrible things happening in the world, what's your kind of daily dose of good news? So again, if we're looking at where traditional CMS plays into the space here, obviously how the content and how the articles are tagged, where they're living, what information is relevant based on today's date, time of year, the seasonality. We're beginning to look at a number of those factors, and in this case, we worked with Google to help produce a first-party action to present positive, happy news. So certainly try it out for those running Google Assistant on any of their devices. One thing to certainly take a look at. Kind of the next piece when we're talking about conversational interfaces, a more traditional chatbot. So the example here is in the kind of fintech area. Traditionally, you may think of your CMS as powering, this website experience. And someone may come on the site, starting to look and navigate through your content, and then actually realizes they're looking for something more helpful. Maybe you're looking for contact center avoidance. Maybe you're looking at more novel ways for your customer based on what your brand is to help interact with them. So one of the things we helped build here was, again, this is kind of a fictitious insurance site, but let someone come on, ask questions, help solve their own answers more through a conversational way. Certainly you could run the content through this, just looking at what you could do through dialog flow. But when you start getting into kind of rich experiences, how deep the conversations go, the number of turns, the number of intents, it certainly strips beyond the capabilities there. When you need to power this in different languages across your different applications and different sites, that's when you want to look critically at your CMS to say, all right, how would I act? How would this manifest itself? Am I then looking up content that's living in my LMS? Am I then looking up content that's on the core website itself? Am I looking at content that's in some context of an employee in a store? So kind of certainly other things to consider. As we're running through the kind of fin services, here's another example, a little bit similar to the last one. Again, the use case here was looking for contact center avoidance. There's a short video which I'll run through, and then I'll kind of walk through it a little bit. This is for a lost credit card example. So if you've ever been someone who's lost your credit card,
their credit card and it has been used at your store recently. Can you please check for a lost credit card ending in 1289? If the card is at your store, press 1. If the card isn't there, press 2. If you would like to check and call us back, press 3. Thank you for your help. Our customer should be at your location soon.
this is kind of the modern day IVR example, which certainly looks incredibly different than it did 5 years ago or even 10 years ago. There's a number of things going on in this example as well. In this case, there's an underlying technology provider that does all the finance, NLP, NLU, but all of those phrases, all those sentences, everything's then being returned back from a CMS itself. I won't say which CMS in this case, a little bit sensitive, but certainly when we're looking at, again, powering this context, again, across devices, surfaces, languages, it strips beyond what you traditionally think of where the something like dialogue will flow. That's where you're using to help build out your experiences. I've got one last finance one. Hopefully you'll bear with me. We read a statistic, something like 1 billion people are underserved by their banks, or what we kind of call this unbanked category in the world. A little over 1.5 billion, and within North America, it's about 100 million people, many of which who have jobs, have careers, receive paychecks, and they actually have no traditional bank. So we're looking at building a solution that would help kind of that underserved population in banking. So again, I'll let the video speak for itself, and then we'll kind of go one by one through some of the examples here.
Okay, Google. Ask Hello Unbanked to send $10 to Jen.
Hi, Chloe. Which Jen? Jen Wallace or Jen McDonald?
Jen Wallace, please.
No problem. I've sent $10 to Jen Wallace.
Thanks.
You have 2 bills with upcoming due dates. Did you want to pay either of the following? Rent $700, due tomorrow. Utilities $25, due this Friday.
Yeah, can you pay the rent, please?
Okay, can you enter your PIN on your phone? Okay, you're all set. The rent is paid. Did you know I can help you save money for your next trip? I could add a small amount to every transaction, or you could choose how much you want to save. Excellent. I'll add small amounts to each transaction to save $2,500 over the next 6 months.
Hey, I think I need a loan.
Okay, here are a few options. $25, $50, and $100.
$100, please.
Certainly. Give me a moment. We can offer you $100 loan at 4.5% interest, payment due in 15 days. Do you want to go ahead with the loan?
Yes.
Okay, can you enter your PIN on your phone? $100 has been placed into your account at 4.5% interest with a payment due in 14 days.
Awesome, thanks.
No problem at all. We're here to help. Can we do anything else to help you?
Actually, I do have a question about something.
You can type your question or jump on a quick video call.
Hello, Betty. Nice to meet you. How can I help?
Hey, John. I have a quick question.
So I'll run through some of the sequences there to help highlight. So when we're looking at any of these kind of complex interactions, certainly this is not all powered by CMS. But again, looking at what the decoupled architecture would look like, certainly some of the content, some of the assets, some of the images, the text itself would certainly be powered by CMS. But what gives some flexibility is when you can look at the overall microservices approach and begin to say, okay, actually, here's what I need from this system, here's what I need from here, how can I stitch together the optimal user experience so that what would have taken you 20 minutes to get into your car, go to the bank, come back a different day to then talk about a loan, could be stitched together in under 2 minutes. So the example there, send money. Obviously, I need to have it's looking at the contacts on my device, so my smartphone's in play, and what's being built there. Whether paying bills, there's some AI around this as well, looking at, all right, last month I noticed you paid these bills, looking at making some recommendations to say, here are the 2 bills that you could be paying, which do you want to be paying? Traditional things, cash checks, certainly a big part of it. And then more and more, when we looked at that unbanking example, we've now taken the entire experience of in-store in a bank and put it on a mobile device. Now I can look at perhaps a more consumer-first approach. Now I need to have content that populates into these various sections of, let's call it the home screen or the dashboard. So that's growing. Again, we're looking at an AI piece around savings over some period. There's a piece around searching your database for content around loan availability, terms, all of these kind of complex things. And again, you're boosting the consumer experience, helping things like looking for rates, building credit. So there's some things around the dashboard there around prepaid credit and debit cards. You've got your social subscription management. You've got conversation escalation to support in the end, which kind of overall manifests itself into something here. So as you can kind of see on the one aspect where your CMS cloud may provide functions executing requests, looking at the storage of assets, the data itself, the strings kind of flowing all the way through to the the user experience on the other end there. And then of course where some of the other pieces may fall into line. The next one I'll run through, this is actually our virtual receptionist at our office. So if you come into our office, yes, obviously we have human beings, but your first read, yes, sorry.
Before you go ahead, can you just explain what an unbank is?
Sure, yeah, go for it.
Sure. So the unbanked, there's two. There's unbanked and underbanked. Unbanked is, as Ben mentioned, I have a job, I have money, but I don't really have a bank. I keep money. Maybe have like one little account, but I'm typically unbanked because that's all I do. I don't really do any transactions. I pay with PayPal, etc. The underbanked are customers who could do so much more because they make very good money. They're quite young, so they've got a long future ahead of them: house ownership, savings accounts, 401ks, etc. But I just don't want to do what my parents do. I'm not really into a bank or a teller or an ATM even. They're the underbanked, and as Ben mentioned, in North America, there's about 100 million people that are under or unbanked that banks are missing out on.
Right, so their paychecks are deposited to PayPal?
Well, unbanked means perhaps I get a paycheck deposited to a single savings account, but the bank never sees I never see the light of day at the bank. I never go to an ATM. It's all online, and the bank is missing out essentially on leveraging me as a customer.
I don't have traditional credit cards. I don't have traditional mortgage. I don't have all the other.
I live with my parents. I have a car. I'm just kind of in the moment. But eventually, we all know you'll need a bank at some point, just one that relates to you.
Right. I'm waiting for it to be Apple Pay. Apple Pay, sign me up.
Yeah.
Apple Pay.
So jumping back to the next example here, talk about virtual receptionists. So again, one of the things that we have in our office is when someone comes in, kind of the routine. I think what actually started this, so we had too many people deliver their Uber Eats lunch and saying, hey, your lunch is here, and putting a message in a Slack channel, and the person at the front felt like they were the actual receptionist for the organization. So it spurred us to look at building something, whether it was you showed up for an interview, your lunch was dropped off, that someone can kind of quickly engage, run through a series of examples. So I'll run through that now.
Alexa receptionist.
Hello, welcome to my planet. I'm a virtual receptionist concept, and I'm kind of new here. How can I help you?
Package for Jesse.
Thank you. Someone will be right with you. Please have a seat.
Scary.
So this integrates obviously with our Active Directory system. This begins to pull content and push a number of notifications and reminders to the users. Those are also stored in CMS. There's some logic assisted there, like you may get one nice friendly one when, please pick this up, and then if 30 minutes goes by, you may get another one that's a little bit more angry until you finally actually come pick up your package. But certainly another example. I've got about one or two more kind of on the CUI space. There's two pieces around this one. This one's looking at kind of the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, who need to, their employees themselves need to interact with the CMS. Yes, there's screen readers and other technologies, but what if we used voice as a way for them to actually input content into the CMS? And then what does that look like? How does that then go to the end user, for the end user to actually look at using voice on their application, asking, say when an event is, and getting some of the information. And in this case, of course, majority of the end users are low vision or blind themselves.
The
employee is sitting at his desk typing on a laptop. An email notification appears on his screen. He uses a keyboard shortcut to open his email and start a screen reader.
Can you please add next week's music jam session to the website calendar?
Let's update a website calendar with your voice.
Alexa, ask .cms to add an event.
On which date?
November 9th, 2018.
At which time?
In the evening at 6:15.
What is the event called?
Music jam session.
Now access those calendar events from any device. A female is standing on a sidewalk with a white cane and a cell phone in her hand.
Okay, Google, what events are happening tonight?
At 6:15 p.m., there's a music jam session located at the community center. Can I send directions to your phone?
Yes.
Changing how we work at work.
This has helped emphasize really obviously how we're looking at the traditional CMS within a workplace, but how can we engage our employees? If we're looking at routine tasks, obviously you're not going to write pages of content by voice and enter that in the system. But if you're setting up things like I have events, it has a start date, an end date, a description, a title. What's another way in which I could help feed that content into the system? And this kind of video showed what that looked like through the full sequence. So from someone being themselves the one, adding it to their content management system, and then the consumer on the other end who's then consuming the data. So again, another way in which you can look at your CMS. The last one, which I'll run through here, kind of an extension of that previous screen that you saw. We've got one customer. They have all their content in Drupal. They built a decoupled Drupal site. It obviously powers their primary.com experience. And most of their content is looking at consuming videos or audio clips. So they wanted to look at ways in which they could broaden their reach. A number of their users use iOS devices. Accessibility is quite good on some of those devices. And this was actually extending it. So all of the content that's being delivered, all of the series, episodes, through their tvOS app are actually done through the CMS itself. So all the content itself still lives in the CMS. That's the kind of conversational interface aspect of it. I'll hand it off to my partner Michael to kind of run through my plan of augmented reality and some of the concepts there.
Thanks, Ben. I just had to go over to Aaron, so monitor that. So another area where content comes to life certainly is around augmented reality, virtual reality. And we're familiar with this area through the various platforms that are common here, ARKit, HoloLens, and Magic Leap 1. What I want to do is show you some examples of how this could potentially work, again, all powered by CMS. One is around, I guess, turning everyday spaces into virtual showrooms. And we think of perhaps the car industry as one example of that. And what this basically allows buyers to do is actually see a product rendered in front of them and configured in front of them as if they actually owned it or was in their driveway or on their back patio or in their kitchen, whatever it might be, and have all that content that's presently residing on a CMS kind of come to life in 3D form. And the way this could potentially work in a car example is, imagine if we had sort of a car on display here, and, oops, sorry. I click on it. And it renders in your phone as if you're looking at it in a driveway, in this case in our office. So this is actually looking at the display of an iOS device, and there is a full-size AMG 63 sedan viewed through a configurator. So imagine that the way the retailer or the car dealer or the boat dealer, whomever, could actually do this, that you could send have a configurator on your device, and the customer or the shopper could hold up their iOS device or their Android device and actually see that boat, that driveway, that barbecue, that coffee maker on their actual, in front of them as if they actually owned it, and configure it along the way. How about silver? How about stainless steel, etc.? And all that content, again, is housed within a decoupled CMS. Another way this works, again, looking at retail, is through Immersive Endcaps. We've all seen these types of displays at stores. It's an end cap because it's the end of an aisle and there's usually some sort of a display. And again, you could use AR to sort of bring this to life. And the way that would work, and I'll pretend I'm the customer here, is I see an end cap display, I see a selection of drills, I hold up my device to the drills, and the camera senses a code or a trigger, and in front of me, like that car example, is a drill. And I'm looking at the drill, it's the size of my hand, I can sort of play with it and look at it. check out the different bit attachments, etc., or whatever power tool it might be. And I can zoom in and out. And of course, the other thing, that you can do here is, as we always say, the best next action for the retailer is to buy the drill. So tie the CMS into a commerce backend, and suddenly I bought the drill, it's being shipped, and by the time I get to my car in the parking lot, that drill is on its way to my house. And it all started with looking at the drill's Endcap display and having it come to life in real time in 3 dimensions in front of me, using my phone that I have with me all the time, of course. The other way this could work is what's called a digital Endcap, and this again is a retail example. And this is where the retailer would have just a wall with nothing there, so there's no architectural reason for this wall to be there. It's simply at the end of a display, but there's nothing there. It's just a blank wall. So here, what you could do is you could have a poster saying, click here to see specials this week. And again, the trigger point through the phone is it creates essentially this where there isn't one. So this is an actual Endcap with displays. In this example, there is no Endcap, but on your phone you see the Endcap in 3D, and again, twirl a carousel of products or look at different offers of the week. And again, all that ties back into a CMS and potentially a commerce backend as well, the shop. So this is another example where sort of a headless CMS empowers more than what it could potentially do just hosting plain content in a retail setting. Question?
Apple recently disbanded their VR glasses unit. Do you think that helps other competitors like Magic Leap, or does it hurt them?
With fewer suppliers, I always get worried. I'd probably want to know a bit more why they disbanded it. Would you know why, Ben, there's that?
Yeah, so I think your question is, does it help or does it not help other players in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of adoption, I guess it would hurt.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things impeding adoption is creating content, the cost of creating content. So certainly there's probably an advantage to having some momentum and number in the space. Most of the projects we're doing right now, our customers are looking at what the exploratory experience could be, or they're very large and saying, actually it doesn't matter, we'll let the user bring their own device. So we see a lot of this come to life with some, as Michael kind of mentioned, with their actual device itself, looking at what the experience is. I still think it's probably 3 years out where it would be perhaps more mainstream. I do think it will be perhaps a miss on Apple's marks. We'll have to see what happens kind of in that 3-year time space. But certainly the cost of creating content for these experiencing devices is quite high. So the more you kind of build in order to build an impetus, it's certainly helpful. So I think it will slow it down a little bit, at least to answer the question more direct.
Thank you.
Another way this helps is around mixed reality and workplace or first-person experiences using virtual reality. So augmented reality, going back, is sort of, I'm looking at something in real life and it's being augmented by something else in its place, like the car in my real driveway or the augmented coffee machine on my real countertop. Virtual reality is I look through and I potentially see a whole different perspective altogether. And we see this as being an experience in a smart interface that again leverages content management. So the example we have here, and Ben, do I just click this to play the video? Is a training environment where someone actually gets training in a factory through virtual reality. So the example here is that person perhaps would have been difficult to do on-site training. That device may have been in someone's office half a world away, but she has to learn how to use it and show competency and how its function affects her job. She can now do that anywhere with a pair of goggles that are sent to her or that she goes to a training facility. The other way this could potentially work is through, let's say, The two examples we thought over dinner last night is, imagine a university wanting to recruit the best students. Well, you send goggles to your key student targets, and they can see the campus with their name on the scoreboard if they're, let's say, a hockey scholarship type of candidate, or a travel experience where you're actually imagining yourself on a hike before you click yes to buy that travel experience. There's all kinds of ways in which virtual reality can enhance that experience. And again, all that content is stored on a CMS.
One of the other things I'll add there as well, we talked about what the adoption is for some of these. Obviously, that was the HoloLens. When we look at even the progression from that to HoloLens 2, the devices themselves are getting smaller. Some you still have to have like the tethered pack that's attached to it. When we can begin to remove that, perhaps make them a little bit less cumbersome, not awkward to wear. So when we see the number of devices that are in the markets now, I think that's the other thing that will quickly begin to speed up the adoption. So it is something perhaps that you could wear that's more fashionable. The example I go to, like, no one talked to them. It was kind of weird talking to yourself on your cell phone when you either had the wires on or you had the 1 meter piece, and now everyone has Apple earbuds and every single person on the street is talking to themselves. So I think as we begin to see some of the adoption there, some of the form factors become smaller, not having to have some requirement around being connected to the internet in some capacity, not being tethered with a physical pack that you have to hold or put in your pocket. Those are things that will quickly speed up the industry adoption as well.
Another area where we see CMS empowering outcomes is around artificial intelligence. Ben mentioned that earlier. One of our partners is IBM Watson, and I want to talk about two examples where, or one example really, we took one up because we wanted to focus, we respected your time obviously, but we think this is the best example of it around content, and that is around travel. So travel and tourism are areas where we see robust experiences for content, because of course travel is all about content. The minute you step off the plane, you're immersed in content, and you typically show it off when you're going places. And the idea here with this concept was to actually create a travel profiler. And the way this works is, using IBM's Watson, is it actually scans social media postings of travelers. And of course, we all know travelers love to share photographs of where they go, where they eat, themselves, as far as what they're wearing. And of course, in the background are things you don't really recognize at first, namely the weather, the topography, is it city versus country, is it farms versus beaches, etc., what they're actually wearing, or is it summer clothes, winter clothes, and based on that whole profile, essentially come up with travel recommendations based on AI looking at the whole list of potential feeds or images and coming up with essentially a travel menu. Because as those who travel probably know, one of the hardest things to do is the agonizing over where should we go, when should we go to that place, what should we see. So this does it automatically based on your habits. The other thing this could do for the actual client is to find new correlations with data. So for example, a surge in sport lovers to one city might reveal a new destinations theme that wasn't previously understood. Why is everybody who loves cricket going to this part of the world at this time of the year? That's why. Let's promote cricket trips to this part of the world, or whatever it might be. This would find that out. Or why is it that people that are always in beaches tend to like this? Let's create a package around that, because we see the proof in the correlations of data. The other example is around going back to retailing, helping retailers actually pair clothing choices to end buyers. And again, when you think of content, retailers have tons and tons of content, images of products, descriptions of products, especially fashion. And this is an example of a high-end fashion retailer where what we call the perfect pairing. This is actually what we call a clienteling app that the store salespeople would use in addressing their clients who spend tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, per year on attire, to really come up with customized recommendations based on their prior purchase patterns, or based on like-minded or like-styled clothing garments being paired together nicely in the past. So someone's made the connection between one kind of shirt, one kind of pants, and that's a popular combination. Therefore, it's going to suggest these pairings, if you will, on the advisor as he's working with the client in front of them in the store. And you've been close on that. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that, Ben? Because I know you've been close on this project.
Search would be the other pice here. So we're looking at where to leverage the capabilities of the CMS, where to start looking at best of breed for other pieces. Your e-commerce site may have search built in as part of the out-of-the-box capabilities. But in some cases, it may be fundamentally broken. You may want to look to pair in search capabilities from different third-party tools. Again, it's fundamentally searching for whether that's content around the product, inspirational content that lives in your CMS, and searching for content that lives in your PIM, representing all your product information. So that was a big part of that project. The other piece here too, where it extended is we think a lot of the customer-facing things, what the customer's experience would be, what portals they log into, what the e-commerce and shop experience looks like. Again, where can we use this technology to help enable the employee? The example here was also looking to leverage search around looking at your CRM records. It took something like 12 seconds to return a record if someone would search Wendell Yonder in this example. How can I bring that down so that when someone's standing in front of the customer and saying, hold on, let me look at something for you, and they're kind of like, oh, how's the weather? And then stalling to buy time as things render. So beginning to leverage the technology where it's best used is one of the use cases that we wanted to consider here as well.
So to tie it all back, one of the reasons we're actually standing here, one of the reasons why this presentation I think resonated with Preston at Decoupled Days was around the fact that we believe that headless CMS can really empower great things, smarter things. It's really the core sort of DNA of that type of an experience. And we wanted to come and talk to you, because there's lots of sessions today and tomorrow that have to do with CMS and the wonders of it in a decoupled way. We wanted to talk about how that can elevate or launch other unique experiences. So that's why we think this session's a bit different and really cool. So to sort of sum up the key pillars of how we kind of look at smarter CMS, going back to what we talked about over the past 40 minutes or so, there's voice search and smart conversational interfaces that can run off decoupled CMS, product configuration, in-store engagement using AR. So the product configurator, again, was configuring your product in front of you as if it was your own in your backyard, driveway, or countertop, and being in a store and seeing something come to life where something normally isn't there. We talked about using training with VR, or even a buyer experience, imagining something in front of you when you're in your living room or in your other office. And then finally, using AI to personalize outcomes, that really personalized content that is sort of built upon millions and millions of other set experiences to give you something that's just very well targeted. Any questions with anything you've seen over the past, we're still good on time here, that you've seen or want to talk about, or talk about the relationship between decoupled CMS and what you've seen today? Yeah.
With the CMS, one of the things that we've been looking at is like a layout management system, dealing with different templates for not only different devices but different. Say like if you're selling some makeup, you may want to display that on a traditional screen. You may want to put it on a phone. You may want to put it in AR.
Yeah.
So how do you? And you may want to have that same content put on different regions, different places. How do you deal with the templating part of? How do you deal with templates in a headless situation?
In this case, you're not using CMS as a templating engine.
Correct. If you're not going to use it like Drupal theming layer.
The React front end as an example on top of what you're building.
Right.
That's a good question. So I think the key comes down to understanding what the content strategy is. So what's the experience actually to be across those devices? So yes, people, lazy is not the right word, they expedient, they want to be able to write once, publish everywhere, in kind of context. I think there's fundamentally, it's worth examining that to say, do I actually want that exact content displayed here, displayed there, or how might I want to adopt it? So I think there's different variations to begin with when you're talking about what the content that needs to make sense to have the right experience on the right device. And then in some cases, you would be maintaining and designing separately what the actual layout and the front end design would look like. So in some cases, you are creating more work for yourself. There's no doubt. I haven't seen a silver bullet that says what translates here translates there. It's not the answer I'm sure you're hoping for. So if it's something specific where you're having a challenge, we can certainly chat and engage people a lot smarter than myself. But hopefully that gives some semblance of where to start. I would say at least start with what the content challenge is, what the content strategy is, and then say where it makes sense to leverage the same patterns, or where it makes sense to diverge them, and then have to support the different layouts in that regards.
Any other questions on what you saw today? Any other ideas? Does this seem to resonate with the overall theme of the 2 days as a unique kind of topic, do we find? Is that mostly yes? Okay. It's a slightly different topic, more kind of business topic, but again, we look at headless CMS as an enabler of many things, and that's why this 2 days is very relevant indeed, we think, to this
I think what's
topic.
part of for us as well, we have many people come and say, oh, I'm looking for CMS, can you make a recommendation? And they're like, I don't have enough fingers and toes to count the number of CMSs that are in the marketplace. Traditionally, our organization 10 years ago started with open source PHP, and that was kind of our bread and butter. And as I mentioned, as we've seen the shift, the markets changed, matured, and we wanted to look at really when someone asks that question, what would you recommend? It's like, well, do you have 2 days to sit down and understand where your business is going? What are the use cases? But begin to get people to stop thinking about CMS as powering their content brochure website and start thinking about CMS empowering their business. So that's kind of how we've shifted the conversation. And then from there, I will make a CMS recommendation based on if you actually sat down for 2 days and taken the time. But that's where we've seen the shift, at least for our business.
Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.